A few weeks ago, I had the good luck of finding a perfect tiny sand dollar on the Oregon coast, and today I want to turn it into a two-sided silver pendant. I'm going to show you how I did so by using silver clay inside a sandwich-shaped mold made from two-part silicone. Before we jump into the process, here is this tiny sand dollar up close. All of those intricate details will be captured in this process, including the ones on the back. The first pendant I made from this sand dollar was with a standard push mold, so while the front was extraordinarily detailed, the back was simply flat. I felt like I was missing out on half of the design. There are various ways to make a two-part mold for a small disc-shaped object. This is a quick version, and I'm sharing it because it is the one that I most often use. So these are the must-haves for this project. A work surface. Today I'm using a ceramic tile, aquaphor or a similar petroleum jelly product, a Q-tip for applying the aquaphor, something to poke small holes with. I'm using this narrow shaping tool, but you can also use a toothpick. This is literally the last toothpick in our house at the moment, so I'm not going to use it, but that's just fine. Two-part silicone mold compound. This starts to set up after the two parts are mixed together. There are different brands of this and they work the same way. I like this one because it mixes up smoothly and sets well and is easy to find. So let's make a mold. First, we need equal sized pieces of the two mold parts. Sometimes I do this by feel, making the two equal parts, and that works too, but because I have a scale, I will use it. This is only giving us to the 10th place, but that is accurate enough for these purposes. Then I will mix these together. I'll show you my whole mixing process, a little bit sped up. I try to hit a rhythm where I'm folding it continuously in on itself. If you have kneaded bread, this will be familiar, except on a tiny scale. I like to be placing my item into the mixed up mold within a minute of starting to mix it up, because then it begins to set and it gets hard and you won't have a good impression after that point. Now that it's all mixed up and starting to feel thick when I knead it, I shape it into a smooth, conical, but not too pointy little torpedo. And this is important. Notice how there are no seams in the mold material on that leading edge where the mold is about to contact the sand dollar. Now I slowly press the torpedo into the center of the sand dollar, corralling it with my fingers on the sides while slowly widening the point of contact. I am prioritizing pushing the silicone into my object rather than letting it go wide too quickly. Once the face of the item is well set in the mold, then I want to shorten the depth of it, bring it around the sides, set it down on a work surface, push the item in at the center, and the mold will come up around the sides, as you see here. I am impressing the sand dollar lower than the surface just slightly because you're about to see that when I poke holes, it will depress the edge of the mold just a little. I make a series of holes around the perimeter. When I put the lid on this mold, the silicone from that piece will slightly enter these holes and make matching marks. They will be subtle, like I can show you here with this mold I took of a piece of a much larger sand dollar where I wanted to capture both sides because the detail is different, and this is enough for them to line up. Now this is fully cured, and I know that because if I give it a gentle poke, nothing will change at this point. I'm going to cover it with the aquaphor. This is important because it keeps the top, which we will mix up in a moment, from adhering to the bottom. It's the same material, top and bottom, and they will want to join if we don't put a layer down to separate them, which is what I'm doing here. I'm going to go a little heavy because I want to make sure it goes everywhere, and you can always wipe it off after you have that full coverage. Everywhere there's yellow, I want this to be, including over the holes. I'm not going to intentionally fill the holes, but I'm not going to avoid them either. And I don't want this on the sand dollar because I want full contact between the silicone mold and the sand dollar. So I'm being very careful about where this goes. Now I mix up the top half of the mold using, again, 2 equal parts and under a minute. And this time I'm not showing you the whole minute of mixing it up, kneading well, and then shaping it into a little torpedo with no seams on the face. And again, I'm going to press down into the center so it spreads out tightly along my sand dollar. And now I'll just let you watch as I work my way around this. Once the sand dollar is covered, I pat down on the top with a heavy finger to spread it out. This is just my favorite way of doing that. I do want a flat top for a reason. I want somewhere to be able to press down once I fill with clay. And I'm also trying to make the contact between the lid portion of the mold here and the sand dollar under it as close as possible. Now here are my first 2 attempts on this lid. You can see small inconsistencies and one small tear. This is sometimes how it goes. Each mold can be very specific. And so from my first 2 attempts, I learned that I need to press the mold even more all the way to the edges of the sand dollar before patting it flat because I wasn't getting a complete impression. This is now air dried completely. Let's see if 3rd time is a charm. I start gently working them apart. Look closely in there. How satisfying is that? And yes, it's a perfect, complete impression, including a bit of sand from the center, which is totally fine. Now that I have a successful top, I can release the bottom and hope for the same. I know from experience that the silicone has its little grippers inside all of those little pores. And if I go quickly on this part, I may break the sand dollar. The mold would probably still be fine, but I want to save my little specimen. So I'm going to release it very slowly. These are truly different clips. It really did take this long to work it loose. Just another 10 seconds. And there we have it. So perfect. It's really captured everything, and I don't have any blemishes. I'm really happy with this. The dots and holes around the perimeter aren't very pronounced, but it is enough that the parts will find their match and settle back into place when you put them together like this. If it feels helpful, you can close the mold and then mark it in a few places across the top and bottom with a permanent marker. It won't last long, but it will last long enough for you to make a few pendants. And now let's make that pendant. If you don't know exactly how much clay you need to fill the volume of a mold, I think the most efficient way is to make a best guess about how much clay you'll need and then overfill the mold by a small amount and then take some away until you see that you have an appropriate amount. If you do it in reverse by adding small amounts of clay until you think you have enough, those bits of clay need to come out and be pressed together, massaged into one piece, and then put back into the mold, which is a fine method too. I use an acrylic board to press the clay into the bottom of the mold. Because I'm pressing so hard, sometimes the clay sticks to the press, which I do not want. So an easy solution for that is to put a layer of plastic between them. And then what remains is to close the lid and press it down into the clay. You should do this all in one shot. Put it on a flat surface, put the lid on, and press straight down. If you press down twice, you do risk creating a double impression. Here you see I'm sliding the press on to the top so carefully and then rotating the top, keeping pressure down as I did so that I wasn't shifting it. If that seems tricky, just press firmly down once in the center and then lift the top straight up. We can see that I have a little bit of clay outside of my impression lines. This could potentially be because of a misalignment of the top and bottom, but I'm pretty confident that it's flashing or excess that I can clear away, so I will do that. The clay is getting dry at this point, so it comes away with gentle pulling. To finish this up, I want that clay to be 100% dry before I demold it, so either air dry for 24 hours or I'll put it on my clay dryer. And then I will run either a gentle sanding pad or a water wipe around the edge to smooth it out, and then either make a bail and attach it or put in a jump ring hole and then fire it. And then I've made myself a beautiful, two-sided, impeccably detailed, one-of-a-kind sand dollar necklace that's ready to wear.